What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. The trial of the Coutts 4, the infamous trial that we've all been waiting for after 900 long days, has finally come to an end. And the verdict, while good, is not a complete win, but it is one that I think is better than what the worst case scenario could have been. And we're going to get into all of that. There's no ads today, no nonsense. Let's just jump straight into it. I want to make sure that we take the time to just get straight to the news today. This article coming out of the CBC. Now, again, a lot of news is suppressed online, and I wanted to show more than tweets. But again, it's also important to show these kind of articles because it shows the narrative spin of, what I call the paid shilled government prostitutes. It says here, protesters not guilty of conspiring to unalive Mounties at Coutts blockade. A jury returned a verdict of not guilty late Friday for two men accused of conspiring to unalive RCMP officers at the border of the blockade at Coutts, Alberta. If you remember what happened down there, it was a huge mess, huge travesty. And of course, while the majority of people agreed to pack up and leave, these four individuals were locked up, one of them taking a plea deal. It's been insanity, but it shows the true extent of the government. Anthony Olenek and Chris Carbert were both convicted on other charges of mischief and possession of a weapon for a dangerous purpose. Olenek was also convicted of possessing a pipe device, we'll say. Again, I apologize. YouTube clamps down on these things. I want to make sure that I'm following the rules safely so that nothing gets censored or pulled. So everybody can get the news they're looking for. But the charges of mischief are something I want to get onto afterwards and why that's important. But it says the two were arrested after police found a cache of weapons, ammunition, and body armor near the blockade at the Canada-US border crossing in 2022. The blockade was one of several held across the country to protest coup rules and poke mandates. The trial heard statements and text messages from the accused warning that the blockade was a last stand against a tyrannical federal government. Well, it was. And I'll be honest, without the Coutts blockade, without the Freedom Convoy, I don't think mandates would have ended when they did. I don't believe, that's my personal opinion, I don't think mandates would have ended when they did. People can say all they want. Well, the other governments gave leeway and, eventually they didn't have anything to stand on. If you remember what happened in Alberta shortly after this happened, again, so the Freedom Convoy and the Coutts took place in March of 2022, or February, sorry, but by March, Jason Kenney had announced the end of those mandates in Alberta. In fact, I believe we were the first province to announce at least some form of a pullback on mandates. There was a loud gasp in the packed courtroom in Lethbridge, Alberta, as the jury announced the acquittal of the most serious charge, conspiracy to unalive the RCMP officers. The men showed little emotion, granted, and the case was put over to August 12th to deal with convictions on lesser charges. And while they say lesser charges, again, it makes me wonder where it's going to go. I've got a quote from Chris Barber that we're going to get into. But until August 12th hits, until their technical sentencing happens, I'm going to remain reserved as to what the judge can and will do to these gentlemen. Supporters celebrate outside of the court. Freedom, a supporter later said outside of the courthouse and then hugged and cried. Of course, they're going to put in the quote freedom because the CBC wants to villainize these people as a small fringe minority. The jury had been deliberating since Wednesday night. The verdicts capped 2 months of testimony in the case that involved accusations of undercover femme fatales, government conspiracies, and text messages bravado. What they don't mention in there is that these men were improperly jailed without bail for over 900 days. The trial heard that Carber called police losers and the enemy. Well, I mean, he's not really wrong. In text to his mother, he equated the blockade to a war, telling her if police came in and they lost the fight at Coutts, he would likely perish in a wider conflict. I mean, you have to understand the way the government treated people. Like, you remember old Stompy back in Ottawa when the Emergencies Act was invoked? People didn't want to move, and the RCMP stomped over people with horses. They beat female reporters. They smashed windows of trucks. They took people's livelihoods. I wouldn't know what's going to happen to people if the police were bringing in that kind of intimidating presence, or what they're prepared to do. Again, the government acted outside of its legal bounds by invoking the Emergency Act. That has been proven in a federal court. But there's nothing wrong with stating. So what the CBC is trying to spin here is the aggression side of things, that it wasn't the fact that they felt threatened by the police presence or by a tyrannical government and thought that anything bad would happen to them as a result of it. It's that, they're prepared to give their lives for what they believe in, supposedly. Olenek told undercover officers posing as protest volunteers that if the blockade was lost, the next step might be an invasion from the UN troops or Chinese communists. Is that really so far-fetched? He said if police tried to storm the blockade, he would, you can see what it says there about removing their jugulars, but it's this was a time where people were fed up. I'm not gonna pass that statement altogether because it is technically uttering a threat. But in the heat of the moment, I mean, at the same time, devil's advocate, pipes that do certain things for industrial use, claims lawyer. They accused one of the undercover female officers of flirting to get information, which is technically entrapment, which the officer denied. The officer testified heart emojis on text between her and Olenek, indicating she liked the messages, not the messenger. Debatable. Again, I'd have to see the context of those texts. Olenek dismissed police complaint as toadies of devil Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. He also messaged a friend to feed his cat if he didn't make it out in one piece. After his arrest, when he learned the blockade failed and everyone left, Olenek was seen on video distraught in an empty police interrogation room saying aloud, "I'm sorry, God." Again, this man's life went upside down. I mean, I'm sure he wished he'd done things differently. The defense didn't contest the emphasis of warnings, but argued that they didn't equate to a conspiracy to harm RCMP officers. Police found firearms, ammunition, body armor in trailers near the blockade, more firearms, ammunition, and 2 pipes at Olenek's home in Claresholm, Alberta. Olenek's lawyer argued that the pipes were for industrial use. The trial proved a challenge for jurors and reflected the tense emotional public debate over pandemic rules and freedoms. 4 days into the trial in earlier June, jurors parking their cars, in front of the courthouse were greeted with a message scrawled in chalk on the sidewalk. 840 days plus already. Let the Coutts boys out of jail now. Again, it wasn't a threat. This is how the mainstream media tries to spin these things, that we're all unhinged, that we're just a crazy, angry mob, and, well, you better let them out or else. They were jailed unrightfully, and for over 900 days. 2 similar messages had been left on the other side of the courthouse the day before. British Columbia man was charged with obstruction of justice and banned from the courthouse. The judge rejected a defense request for a mistrial, which is good. Carbert's lawyer, Catherine Bayak, said outside the courthouse after the verdicts that her client was relieved but still in shock. The jury was right to acquit on the conspiracy charge. She said it was an overcharge to begin with. Of course it was. It was overreach. Marilyn Burns, Olenek's lawyer, said she wasn't surprised the men were found not guilty of the conspiracy charges. I've never believed since taking this file on that there was evidence that would support the finding of guilt in that. But again, you're being judged by a jury of your peers. And I'm sorry to say this for anybody who lives around Lethbridge or is from Lethbridge. It's a typically left-leaning town. I mean, Lethbridge typically votes NDP. When the common denomination of feeling around there was that we were putting everybody at risk, that we're selfish, that we're all these terrible things. I mean, you've seen people essentially labeling anyone from these protests as dirty, as the devil. When you're being judged by a jury of your peers, the evidence doesn't always stand out. Sometimes it's just a matter of personal opinion that affects the jurors to convict for the sense of personal satisfaction. She added that her client had been in custody for more than 2 years. Again, finally mentioned in this article. 2 other protesters were also charged with conspiracy to commit at Coutts. In February, Christopher Lysak and Jerry Morin, pleaded guilty to lesser charges. Lysak was sentenced to 3 years for possession of a restricted firearm in an unauthorized place, and Morin was sentenced to 3.5 years for conspiracy to traffic firearms. Both sentences amounted to time the men had already served in pretrial custody. So again, it's really going to come down to, for me anyways, my personal opinions, what happens in this technical sentencing for mischief. Now, I want to get into what the actual charges were, because that's important. CBC article doesn't really lay it all out, but here's Jason Levine, a good friend of the channel, putting out Coutts verdict. Anthony Olenek, not guilty of conspiracy, guilty of possession of weapons for dangerous purposes, guilty of mischief over $5,000, guilty of possession for pipes for a dangerous purpose. Christopher Carbert, not guilty for conspiracy, guilty of possession of weapons for purposes, guilty of mischief over $5,000. Sentencing/bail hearing is August 12th, 2024. So the fact that they've added bail hearing to that, I don't know if Jason added that or if that's just straight from the horse's mouth. These guys have been in jail for almost 900 days. This is asinine. They should just be time served, get out, go ahead. Again, August 12th. I'll cover on the 13th or later on the 12th, depending on when the news drops, what happens to the Coutts boys in terms of their mischief sentencing. And it's important to note, too, that Chris Barber and Tamara Leach are headed back into court later this month to hopefully end the long trial that's been ongoing for their participation in the Ottawa Freedom Convoy. But when you see these charges coming forward, it makes me wonder, what would a corrupt Liberal judge in Ottawa throw at Chris Barber and Tamara Leach if these are similar or to be expected? Friend of the channel, Marty Up North, tweets out, how much did Trudeau's refusal to simply come out and talk with the truckers cost our nation? It's almost an immeasurable price that we will all pay, for generations to come. The division across the country, the broken trust of our institutions, the billions of dollars in lost economic activity, the legal battles, which again are very costly, the destroyed livelihoods, the shattered families, the injured, the demoralized citizens, the young children robbed of their ability to socialize, the bankrupt businesses, it goes on, all because of one man's ego. All he had to do was come out, have a coffee, and talk. I mean, yeah, that's essentially what we're talking about here. That's the problem. You have a narcissistic dictator-like prime minister who would rather enforce illegal measures on Canadian people than hear what they have to say. But he's okay to go on YouTube channels. He's okay to walk along the beach with people and chat. He's okay to shill to his bought and paid media anytime he wants to. But when thousands of concerned citizens show up on Ottawa's front lawn, nope, label them all demons and freeze their bank accounts and invoke illegal measures. Of course, Chris Barber chimed in saying 900 days in remand facilities for improper storage of a firearm seems legit under Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party's tyrannical government. Canada has become a disgrace under this regime. This is why you enacted the Emergency Act or the War Measures Act, right? It was all just a flex. They had no grounds for it. Again, Supreme Court says no. It was illegal. Or sorry, a federal judge deeming it was illegal. It was a flex. He was mad that people dare question dictator Trudeau. What's more concerning as these trials wrap up is now the Coutts guys' trial, aside from August the 12th, has been put to rest. Chris Barber and Tamara Leach, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. But if you remember Pat King was arrested again this week. I meant to get a video out on this, but I also knew this verdict was possibly on its way sometime soon, so I was hopeful it would come quickly and we could cover this like we're doing in this video. King turned himself in on Wednesday and intends to fight allegations he breached his bail. Now, I don't know a lot about what's going on with Pat King. I've been told that he's separated and his ex, this is some kind of vindictive push or something to say hearsay, whether she has evidence or not. I'm sure she has to have some kind of evidence or else they wouldn't just immediately arrest Pat King. But supposedly, allegedly, we'll say until things are confirmed that there's evidence that he breached his bail to try and strike back at him, I guess. Pat King's trial may have ended last week, but the prominent figure in 2022 convoy protests is back behind bars after turning himself into police amid allegations he breached his bail conditions. King has pleaded not guilty to mischief, intimidation, and other charges for his role in what became known as the Freedom Convoy. During a brief court appearance on Wednesday, the Crown confirmed there was an ongoing investigation and additional charges were anticipated. After his trial ended, King has broadcast online something he had done occasionally since being released from custody in July of 2022. He was given specific permission to do this in order to raise funds for his legal expenses, but is not allowed to comment on the case. In those broadcasts, King discussed the status of his sureties and his plans to sue the government following a possible victory in the courts. He's also spoken at length about his trial, which is expected to return October 4th for its decision. Again, he has the right to talk about suing the government. He has the right to sue the government for what they've done. He was illegally arrested. King arrived at the Ottawa courthouse just past 2 p.m. on Wednesday and shortly afterward was led away in handcuffs. He didn't make any comment as he entered the courthouse, but his lawyer, Natasha Calvino, released a statement following his appearance saying that there were allegations King had breached his bail conditions. Mr. King will be seeking a bail hearing at the earliest opportunity and intends to vigorously defend against any allegations that he breached his previous bail conditions, the statement read. One of the people responsible for monitoring King while he was on bail also confirmed to the court that they no longer wanted to do so. Again, alleged claims of his ex. King had been in Alberta and was appearing by video conference for the final days of his trial. By Sunday, word had spread online amongst the supporters and followers he would be turning himself in. On Monday night, King told his supporters he would be traveling to Ottawa and surrendering to the police because of allegations of breach. It's expected King will seek to be released on bail with the first opportunity, which likely isn't until next week. Absolutely crazy. I think it's the 6th or somewhere around there that Pat King's able to appeal his case. So Tuesday. Again, whatever happens in there, whatever comes forward, I'll keep you guys posted. But crazy news. Absolutely craziness. After 2.5 years, the government of Canada is still ruthlessly trying to ruin the lives of those who stood up, who spoke out against tyranny, who tried their best to run with what was on the ground and make the best out of a bad situation by trying to show the government that, hey, there is some power in numbers. We're the ones who put you in that power. And we have the right to take it away or question it. We have the right to push back when you oppress us, when you try to shut us down and tell us how to live, where we can and can't go, what we can say, who we can see. These men are paying, and women, are paying and have paid the ultimate price. Aside from ceasing to exist. The Coutts men have been unnecessarily detained, thrown in jail, spent years away from their families, lost time with their children, all because Justin Trudeau wants to flex and say, don't ever question my authority. I'd be interested to hear what Danielle Smith has to say on the Coutts boys, especially given now that the trial is technically over. She's not technically interfering with anything. And of course, that's been her claim from day one, is that I as the premier, I'm not allowed to interfere. I'm not allowed to step in or question anything. And it's true. That is her jurisdiction. And I do agree that should she have tried to question anything or speak about it or give her 2 cents, there would have been a lot of backlash. So given her kind of pro-libertarian view on things, I really be interested to hear what Danielle Smith has to say about the treatment of the Coutts 4 following this verdict, and possibly the treatment of Pat King as well. Again, pending what evidence comes forward. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comments. Are you happy to hear what happened with the Coutts 4? Again, I would have preferred that it were nothing. They were not guilty of anything, only because it raises flags for Chris Barber and Tamara Leach. Again, questioning what's going to happen to them, but we'll keep up on that. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a comment and a thumbs up on the way out. And if it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure to click that red bar and subscribe to the channel. Also, click your bell for notifications. Join me live this week. I'll be doing a fun stream at some point. I've been occasionally doing fun streams lately where sometimes I'll play retro video games, chat with you guys, get to know you guys outside of making these videos. And we often talk about some really fun topics, and it's been a blast lately. I know my community has been having a fun time with it, and it would be great to see you guys out in those live streams. Just a reminder, this Friday, usually we do Friday Night Fringe. I typically do my live stream show every single Friday talking about politics and what's going on in the world of politics. Unfortunately, I'm out of town this Friday, so there will be no live stream, but don't fret, ladies and gentlemen. I will try to do a makeup stream where I can. Streams will resume after this Friday to every single Friday again for Friday Night Fringe, and I hope to see you guys there. I enjoy talking to you outside of making these videos. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.